Hi everybody and welcome back. Now we're moving into a new section of our class and new lessons, and these are all to do around modeling users. So in this lesson and those to come, we'll discuss and implement a data model for users of our site. We'll also discuss how to store data. Over this and the lessons to come, we're going to be creating a full Rails login and authentication system. From the beginning of this class, we've seen and used gems via the gems file. So Rails does provide several gems which we could use to create a login and authentication system straight out of the box. That means no coding by us, or very little coding by us, and it would be up and working. But that's not going to teach us much, and there's no fun in that. For our learning journey, it's better to see the nuts and bolts and to build up our knowledge over several lessons. When we're finished, we'll have developed a fully professional grade login and authentication system. And what's more, we'll know exactly how it works. Now in a previous lesson we created a template sign-up page. So at the moment, if we were to let users sign up, we have nowhere to store their data. So the first thing that we need to do is create a place to store user data. At the very beginning of our journey, we discussed the Rails MVC architecture, or the Rails Model View Controller architecture. M is for the model, and this is the default structure for a data model in Rails. Like most web applications, to store, keep and retrieve data or maintain persistence, Rails uses a relational database. In Rails, the default library for interacting with a database is called the Active Record. Active Record provides us with a way of creating, saving and finding data objects without having to use SQL. Rails also has migrations, which allow us to write data definitions in Ruby. Over the course of the coming lessons, you'll notice that we barely have to think about how Rails stores our data. So to begin, let's create a new branch. So here I am here in my terminal. What do we want to call this branch? Let's say git checkout, B for new branch, and let's say user-data model. There we go, we switched to a new branch. In a previous lesson, we created a custom user class along with user objects with name and email attributes. A major disadvantage of that class was the lack of data storage or persistence. We used the Rails console to interact with our class, but the data disappeared as soon as we closed it. Our data model will start with two attributes, name and email, and our email address is going to be the unique username. We'll add in passwords later. A relational database is used by Rails, consists of tables. A table is composed of rows and data. So let's take a look at an example. Let me slide across here. There we go. So as you can see here, I have a sample of what our users table would look like in a database. So we have the table header, which contains ID, name and email address. And every table has rows and columns. So here's a column. So the column email address. And we also have rows. So as you can see here, from left to right are the rows. So ID, name and email address. These three attributes make up one row of data. And each row is one user. Database tables are very similar to spreadsheets. Now, as mentioned at the start of this lesson, we're also going to have a user data model. Let's take a look at what that will look like. So we'll have users, and within our users data model, each user will have an ID, which is an integer, a name, which is a string, and an email address, which is also a string. Active Record will figure out the user object attributes for us from the column's name and email. In previous lessons, we've used the Rails generate command, such as Rails generate controller. Now we'll use it again to create our model. So let's jump back into our terminal. Here we go. And what command do we want to say? We want to say Rails generate, spell it correctly, Rails generate model, capital U for user, and we're going to attach attributes to it now as we saw in our user data model. So we're going to have name, colon, string, and we're going to have email, colon, string. Let's hit enter. And actually just before I hit enter, something to note, controller names are plural, such as users controller, and model names are singular, such as user model. So as you can see here, I have Rails generate user, singular, but when we're generating controllers, it's plural. Let me hit enter and give that a moment to run. There we go. So as just mentioned, we've passed Rails the two attributes we need along with the types that they should be. So name, string, email, string. So this is a lot easier than the code we typed in previous lessons. So with the generate command we've just run, you'll notice here a new migration file. So db/migrate/ and there is date and timestamp create_users. Migrations are a way for us as developers to make changes to the structure of a database incrementally. Let's jump into this file now. So on the left hand side we go db, so there we go, it's green because there's been a change. Migrate, and there it is there. Now your timestamp is obviously going to be different. So this file is automatically created by the Rails generate model command. And as you can see inside it, there is a users table with two columns, name and email. So we should now know from previous lessons and previous learnings that we have a method, def change, so a change method, and that method creates a table of users and it adds to that table two attributes, name, email, which are both strings, and a timestamp. As you can also see here, the create table method accepts a block with one variable, t. Here it is here on line 3. The t object is used by the create table method to create name and email columns in our database of type string. The table name is plural and model name is singular, such as user. A model represents a single user. A database table has many users. And the code t.timestamp is a special command that creates two magic columns, and those magic columns are created at and updated at, but we don't have to worry about them because, as I just said, this is a magic command which does it for us automatically. These timestamps are automatically created and recorded when a user is created and updated in our database. The next thing we need to do is run the migration, which is called migrating up. So we are migrating up into a database. To do this, we run the following command. So back down into our terminal, Rails db migrate. This is the command to create our actual database. So this command runs our method here, def change. Okay, that looks good. So as you can see here, we have a bit of output, creating users migrated. So the first time this command is run, a file called dbdevelopment.sqlite is created. This is an SQLite database file, so let's have a look. Here it is here. Can't make much sense of that at the moment. That's because it's an SQL database file. To view the structure of this database, we can use a tool called DB Browser for SQLite. Let's take a look at where we can find this tool. Let's jump over into our web browser, and as you can see here, I'm on a page for DB Browser for SQLite. So there's the URL there, so go ahead and head to that now. This is the free tool that allows us to inspect databases, or specifically SQLite databases. If you're using the Cloud IDE, first download the DB file to your local machine. So if you're in Cloud, first download the development.sqlite file. For the rest of us, go ahead now and download this piece of software. With that piece of software downloaded and installed, let me open it up. So let me go back to my Atom. Okay, here's the DB browser for SQLite, and as you can see, there's nothing in it. We need to navigate to our database file. So let's say Open Database. Now, where's my Rails project, and where do you save your Rails project? I have mine on my desktop. Here it is here, and as we just seen on our tree structure here on the left hand side in Atom, we know that we go into DB, and there it is there, look, development.sqlite tree. Let's click on that and click Open. And as you can see, it's quickly populated in the DB browser. Now from here, what we want to go to is this tab, Browse Data. And from the table drop down, we can see here now we have our users table, which we created with the previous migration command. And there we go. ID is automatically being added, name, email, and as mentioned, the two magically created at, and updated at. Okay, so hopefully you have that installed. You've been able to navigate to your development SQLite file, and you can see the users table. So I'm just going to close this. Back in our Atom, let's navigate to dbschema.orb. And what this file is, it is a record of the current state of our database. So for example, within our database, if we ever make an error or we ever want to roll back to a previous version, we can look at this file here, but we don't directly interact with this file. As you can see here, please use the migrations feature of Active Record to increment this file or to edit this file. So what that means is, back here in our terminal, we use the migrations command, and we've already seen one, which was Rails DB migrate. If, for example, we make a mistake, we could say Rails DB rollback. And that will roll back to the previous version of our database. If I hit enter, there you go, you can see the schema file automatically updated and it's removed the users table. Now that's not what we want, so I'm just going to put it back in. And there we go, you can see our schema file updated again. So that's how, now you don't necessarily have to look at that file, but that's how we roll back to different versions of the database if something goes wrong. Okay guys, that's it for this lesson. We've covered a lot. In the next lesson, we're going to get into the actual model file. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you there.